The sun was barely cresting the desert horizon when the town awoke to a sight that shouldn't have been possible. It stood on the far edge of the sands, a perfect dome, vast and smooth, shimmering in the early light as though it were made of liquid glass. It hadn't been there yesterday. A murmur rolled through the streets. People stepped outside in pajamas, clutching mugs of coffee gone forgotten, eyes fixed on the horizon. A few climbed onto rooftops for a better view. The morning air was still, but the ground seemed to hum, a low, steady vibration that could be felt in the chest more than heard in the ears. At the edge of a growing crowd, a teenager shoved forward, breathless. "I saw people," he blurted to the nearest news crew, "moving, inside." The reporter's eyebrows arched, but before he could press for details, the hum deepened, like something alive was breathing beneath that vast, alien skin. By mid-morning, the desert around the dome was a mess of tire tracks and boot prints. Military trucks roared in, throwing up clouds of dust. Fences were hammered into the hard ground. Satellite dishes swung toward the anomaly, operators tapping furiously at keyboards. 3 figures moved through the ordered chaos. Dr. Mara Vance, lean and precise, her gaze locked on the shifting light of the dome. Eli Miller, ex-military, scanning with binoculars, his stance one of instinctive readiness. And Aya Brown, an archaeologist with a camera hanging from her neck, already circling the dome's surface, searching for patterns. "These aren't random," Aya murmured, fingertips brushing faint ridges in the glassy surface. Miller glanced over. "What isn't?" "The lines. They look like a city grid. Streets, blocks. Or targeting data," Miller muttered. Vance pressed her gloved hand flat against the dome. It yielded beneath her touch, rippling outward in a soft shimmer. Light bent strangely around her reflection. Miller stepped closer. "That's not solid." "One-way permeability, maybe," Vance said quietly. She pushed her hand forward, slipping it into the surface as though through water, and pulled it back unharmed, beads of condensation glistening on the glove. Aya's voice held equal parts awe and fear. "What's on the other side?" Vance's eyes narrowed. "Only one way to find out." They stood before the soft spot a few minutes later, gear strapped tight, radios checked. The military liaison's expression was grim. "We can't guarantee what's inside. Could be radiation, toxins." "We're already here," Miller cut in. "Let's not waste daylight." Vance glanced at them both. "On my mark." She stepped forward, and the dome parted around her like liquid glass. The world beyond warped, sound dulled, colors smeared, shapes bent and twisted, and then they were through. Silence. The city rose around them in eerie perfection. Crystal and steel towers reaching toward a sky locked in late afternoon light. A frozen sun glowed low on the horizon. A bird hung in the air before them, its wings suspended mid-beat. A scrap of paper drifted down a side street, moving as slowly as a falling leaf in a dream. "Oh my God," Aya whispered. Miller reached out, tapping the bird's wing. It twitched, fluttering no more than an inch before freezing again. "They're alive," Vance murmured, her voice barely above the silence. But trapped. The air inside carried a faint, stretched-out ticking, the sound of a clock running in another world. And with that sound came the weight of the truth. Whatever had happened here, time itself had been broken. The 3 of them moved cautiously down the silent street, boots echoing too loudly in the stillness. Every sound seemed wrong here, too sharp, too present, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Aya slowed, crouching beside a toppled fruit cart. Apples and pears were scattered across the cobblestones, each one mid-roll, caught in a syrupy crawl toward the gutter. She reached out and nudged one. It spun under her fingers, but at a glacial pace, its momentum resisting the normal rules of gravity and time. "It's like we're walking through molasses," she said softly. "Not us," Vance murmured. "Them." Radio static crackled faintly in Miller's earpiece. A voice from the outside perimeter, sharp, clinical. "Team 1, we're tracking your telemetry. Confirm, time ratio is extreme. Rough estimate, 1 minute your time equals roughly 3 days hours." Miller's eyes flicked toward Vance. "You're telling me they've been stuck here for—" Vance cut in. "Centuries. From out there? But from in here? Hours, maybe less." Aya shivered. "They don't even know." They passed an open-air cafe. Tables sat untouched, glasses half-filled, steam from cups frozen mid-swirl. A waiter stood at the center of it all, tray raised, a half-smile fixed on his face, locked forever in that fraction of a second. Aya stared up at him. "Alive." Vance nodded. Their hearts are beating. Their neurons are firing. Just slower than we can comprehend. Miller moved on, scanning the plaza ahead. His instincts screamed that they were being watched. In the center of the plaza stood a fountain, water leaping upward in perfect arcs, each droplet a gemstone suspended in the air. Sunlight caught them in dazzling rainbow shards. Aya raised her camera, snapping a shot. The click of the shutter sounded like a gunshot in the heavy quiet, and then a flicker. At the far end of the square, a figure moved, just slightly, barely enough for the human eye to catch. Vance froze, hand on Aya's shoulder. "Did you see that?" she whispered. The figure, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, stood half-hidden behind a column. Her eyes were wide, locked on the intruders. Her lips parted, the words formed slowly, painfully slowly. "Help us." Aya took a step forward. She's talking to us." "No," Vance corrected, pulling a flashlight from her pack. "She's trying to." At this speed, she might not finish a sentence for hours. She switched the flashlight to strobe mode, pulsing quick bursts, a crude form of Morse. Simple phrases. "We see you. Are you safe?" The woman flinched at the light, then raised her hand, a motion that seemed to take half a minute. From behind her, another figure appeared. Older, taller, dressed in strange crystalline armor. His expression was urgent, his movements deliberate. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the woman and the newcomers, and then he too began to mouth words. This time, Miller caught them. "Looks like, stay away." The hum in the air deepened. Aya glanced up. Above them, the dome's smooth surface, visible through gaps between buildings, was spiderwebbing with thin, glowing cracks. Each fracture pulsed faintly, like veins of molten gold. Vance's voice was tense now. "The structure's destabilizing." From the radio, "Team 1, you've got limited time. External command says, prepare for immediate extraction." Aya's eyes darted between the woman's pleading gaze and the glowing cracks above. "We can't just leave them here." Miller's jaw tightened. "We may not have a choice." Somewhere deeper in the city, a distant, drawn-out crash echoed through the frozen air. The sound warped and stretched, as if the city itself was groaning in pain. The young woman flinched. The armored man put a hand on her shoulder, and then, slowly, he looked straight at Vance. His mouth formed 3 words. "Find the core." Vance's breath caught. Aya's eyes widened, and Miller muttered under his breath, "I don't like where this is going." The plaza felt emptier now, though nothing had truly moved. The young woman and the armored figure still stood across the square, frozen mid-gesture. The golden cracks crawling through the dome's surface seemed brighter, sharper, like lightning veins waiting to strike. Vance's gaze was fixed on the armored man's lips, still hanging on the last word he'd formed. "Core." She turned toward Aya and Miller. "They know what's causing this. It's in the city's center." Aya's voice was low but urgent. "Then we go find it." Miller hesitated, scanning the edges of the plaza. "You don't even know what core means in their context. It could be a power plant or a bomb." Vance's eyes hardened. "If it's keeping this place frozen in time, it's our only shot." They moved quickly, or rather, what felt quick to them. To the city's inhabitants, they were streaking figures of impossible speed, a blur through streets where everything else crawled. Their path wound between impossibly tall towers that glittered like cut gemstones in the frozen sunlight. Glass facades reflected impossible rainbows, shards of color that shimmered when you moved past them, bending light in ways that made your eyes ache. As they turned down a narrow street, Miller slowed. "Hold up, something's ahead." Vance followed his gaze and saw it, a mass of debris suspended in the air. A sky bridge above them had partially collapsed, its shattered metal frame dangling like the bones of some enormous animal. Shards of glass hung mid-fall, glittering, catching the light like suspended rain. Aya stepped closer, fascinated. She reached up to touch a shard. It spun slowly under her fingertip, resisting her push like she was moving it through thick oil. "This is beautiful," she whispered. Miller's tone was flat. "Beautiful and deadly. If whatever's holding it drops, it'll be moving at our speed." They edged carefully around it, boots crunching on cobblestones that were perfectly clean. Not a speck of dust had settled here in centuries. Farther on, they entered what must have been a public square. In the center stood a vast sculpture, concentric crystal rings that rotated around a central pillar. Only now, the rings moved so slowly that their motion was almost imperceptible. As they passed, a droplet of water from a nearby fountain brushed against the outer ring and exploded into a burst of glittering mist, scattering like diamond dust. Vance froze. Did you see that? That droplet hit a velocity shift. It crossed back into normal time. Aya swallowed hard. So parts of the city are unstable? Worse, Miller muttered. Parts are waking up. The spire loomed ahead now, impossibly tall, like a needle of molten glass stabbing the sky. Through its translucent walls, faint pulses of light traveled upward in slow, rhythmic waves. Aya lifted her camera, snapping a shot. The flash seemed to ripple through the building, faintly echoing the dome's own shimmer. Vance's voice was calm, but her grip on her pack strap was tight. That's it? That's the core. Miller didn't like the look of the place. The way its light seemed almost to watch them. Let's hope it's as easy to shut down as it is to spot. A sudden, deep vibration shuddered through the ground beneath their feet. The slow-motion world around them seemed to ripple, like the surface of disturbed water. Aya's eyes darted upward. The golden cracks in the dome were spidering faster now, jagged lines spreading like ice on a frozen lake. Vance looked back at them. We don't have much time. They stepped into the shadow of the spire, not yet knowing whether crossing that threshold would save the city or destroy it. The spire's base was a cavernous plaza of black glass and pale stone, ringed with frozen banners that swayed eternally in a non-existent wind. The entrance was flanked by two massive statues, stylized humanoid figures with elongated features, their hands pressed together as though in silent prayer. Miller stopped just short of the archway. This is where we turn back, he said flatly. Aya turned on him, disbelief in her voice. What? He gestured upward. You've seen the cracks. The dome's going to collapse. That energy has to go somewhere. We have no idea if this core will stabilize it or blow the whole city into a billion slow-motion shards. Vance stood between them, her gaze fixed on the faint pulses of light traveling up the spire's walls. If we leave now, she said quietly, this city stays locked for forever. Centuries will pass outside. Everyone in here will still be standing in the same spot, waiting for a moment that never comes. The radio on Miller's shoulder crackled, a clipped voice from the outside. Team 1, be advised, Command is prepping a containment strike. 30 minutes. Aya's eyes widened. They're going to destroy it? Neutralize it, the voice corrected. Vance cut the radio feed, her tone sharp. We don't have 30 minutes to argue. Miller's jaw tightened. You go in there, you go in without me. Vance didn't flinch. Then I go without you. Aya was already stepping toward the doorway. I'm with her. They slipped inside, leaving Miller in the square, the hum of the spire vibrating faintly under his boots. For a long moment, he stared up at the fractures in the dome and cursed under his breath before following them in. Inside the spire, the entry hall was a vertical tunnel of glassy walls shot through with veins of gold and sapphire light. The air felt heavier here, as if gravity had decided to double itself. Every step was an effort. Above them, great rings of crystalline machinery rotated around the core shaft, impossibly slow, but massive enough that their motion could still be felt. Aya brushed her fingers along the wall, leaving ripples of light that spread outward before fading. This whole place, it's alive, she whispered. Halfway up the wide spiral walkway, they encountered their first hazard, a suspended platform halfway through falling from the level above. Its shadow crawled across the floor like a dark glacier. Vance studied it, her mind running the math. We can duck under it. It won't hit for another 2 minutes our time. Miller eyed the edges warily. And if you're wrong? Then we're part of the floor decoration, Aya said, ducking beneath with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. The deeper they climbed, the more unstable the time pockets became. A cascade of glass fragments hung mid-air above a shattered balcony. But one shard was falling normally, spinning toward the floor. Miller caught Vance by the collar, pulling her back just as it struck, exploding into a spray of glittering dust. Wake-up zones, he muttered. Like the droplet in the square. Step wrong, and you're in normal time for half a second, long enough to kill you. At last, they reached the core chamber. It was a vast sphere of warped crystal suspended in mid-air, held in place by 6 thick conduits that pulsed with alternating gold and deep blue light. The surface of the sphere was in constant, liquid-like motion, patterns folding in on themselves, fractal geometry shifting faster than the eye could follow. Vance stood transfixed. It's beautiful. Aya stepped closer, squinting at the patterns. It's not random. It's like a heartbeat. Miller scanned the conduits. So where's the off switch? A deep vibration rolled through the chamber. Not just sound, but feeling, like the whole spire had inhaled. The golden veins in the conduits flared, and the hum rose in pitch. Vance turned toward them, eyes alight. I think I know how to stop it. Miller shook his head. Or blow it sky high. The hum was deafening now, a constant vibration in their bones. The golden light surging through the conduits had reached a fever pitch, pulsing in rapid waves. Vance stood before the crystal sphere, her fingertips hovering inches from its surface. Aya's voice trembled. If you touch it, what happens? Vance's eyes never left the swirling patterns. If I'm right, it will collapse the time field. Everything will restart. If I'm wrong... Miller stepped forward, jaw set. We die. Along with them. For a moment, the only sound was the strained hum of the core. Outside, the fractures in the dome widened, shafts of blinding light spearing through. From the spiral walkway below, a faint movement, two figures climbing toward them. The young woman from the plaza, the armored man. Their motions were still impossibly slow, but their faces were desperate. The armored man's lips formed new words. Do it, Vance's breath caught. She looked at Aya, then at Miller. You still think we should walk away? She asked quietly. Miller hesitated, eyes flicking to the two frozen figures, then gave the smallest of nods. Vance placed her palms flat against the core. Impact. Light exploded outward, a blinding surge of gold and blue that swallowed the chamber. The hum became a roar, and the air seemed to shatter. The conduits snapped like brittle glass. The sphere's surface rippled once, then dissolved into a million sparks that raced out through the spire's walls. From the desert, the great shimmering shell fractured, shards of liquid glass breaking away and evaporating into the air. The golden cracks flared once more, then vanished entirely. Inside the city, time lurched forward. The bird in the plaza beat its wings in a frantic burst and shot into the sky. Water from the fountains splashed into the basins. The street vendor gasped, looking down at the tray in his hands. And across the square, the young woman stumbled forward, eyes wild with confusion. Vance stood in the middle of the plaza, heart pounding, as dozens, then hundreds of voices rose in chaotic unison. The sound was overwhelming, raw with shock and fear. The young woman spotted her. She pushed through the crowd, breathless, eyes brimming with gratitude, and something else. Terror. She stopped a few feet away, chest heaving. Slowly, she raised her hand and pointed upward. Vance followed her gaze. Above the city, the clouds were twisting, spiraling into a vortex of silver and black. From its center, something massive emerged. Not a ship, not anything human. It was alive, vast, its surface like living metal, its eyes burning with cold light. The young woman's voice trembled, just loud enough for Vance to hear. They're back. The vortex tore the sky apart. Clouds spun into a spiraling funnel of silver and black, and from its heart something emerged. It was not a ship. It was alive. A vast serpentine form of living metal unfurled from the storm, each segment shimmering with scales of liquid silver. Eyes like molten stars scanned the city below. Along its body clung smaller creatures, drones, or perhaps symbiotic hunters, their wings beating in unnatural silence. The young woman at Vance's side whispered, "They've come for what you broke." Vance's stomach tightened. The core. Miller's hand went to his rifle on instinct. "Tell me we have a plan." The armored man stepped forward, his voice deep and unhurried now that time had equalized. "When our city was struck, we froze ourselves. It was not the weapon you think, it was a seal, to keep them from taking what lay within." Aya's eyes widened. The core wasn't just a power source. "No," the armored man said. "It is the heart of Eris. It draws energy from the fabric of time itself, in the wrong hands." His gaze shifted upward to the descending Leviathan. "It will unmake your world." The Leviathan's drones fanned out over the city, their metallic carapaces catching the late sunlight. Every few seconds, one would dip low, scanning the streets with a cone of pale light. Anything caught in it froze, not in fear, but literally. Movement halted, mid-breath. "They're locking people in place again," Aya murmured. "They are hunting," the armored man corrected. Vance's mind raced. "If they want the core, they'll head for the spire." Miller's voice was tight. "Then we go the other way. Get everyone out." Aya spun on him. There is no out. The only path is the one they used to get in, the vortex. You think they're going to let us walk through it? A deep, resonant boom rolled through the air as the Leviathan coiled around the top of the spire. Its drones dove toward the shattered core chamber. The armored man's voice was grim. The core's fragments must be reunited. If we restore it before they finish their harvest, we can send them back. Miller glanced up at the impossible creature wrapping itself around the city's heart. That's a hell of an if. They moved fast, using narrow streets and shadowed alleys, avoiding the drone sweeps. The wake-up zones were worse now, random pockets where time snapped back to normal for an instant, sending loose debris crashing down or fountains surging violently. Aya nearly lost her footing crossing a plaza when an entire section of frozen rain suddenly fell, drenching the ground in icy water. Miller caught her, dragging her into cover. Vance spotted the first shard of the core lodged in a collapsed market stall, a crystalline piece the size of a human head, pulsing faintly with gold and blue light. She wrapped it in insulating cloth and stowed it in her pack. By the time they reached the spire, they had gathered 4 fragments. 2 more to go. The last pieces lay inside the shattered chamber itself, now crawling with drones. Miller studied the pattern of their sweeps. 2 minutes between passes. If we move now, we die, Vance finished. We wait for the vortex surge. It came as a blinding flash overhead, a ripple that made the drones falter mid-flight. In that heartbeat of confusion, they ran. Vance snatched the 5th shard from a split control panel. Aya slid across the slick floor, wrenching the 6th from its cradle beneath a beam. A metallic shriek shook the chamber. The Leviathan had seen them. They scrambled to the core's central pedestal. Vance jammed the shards into place, each one locking in with a sharp pulse of light. The sphere reformed before their eyes, its patterns swirling faster and faster. The hum returned, louder than before, resonating in their bones. The Leviathan lunged through the chamber wall, its head filling the space, molten eyes fixed on them. "Vance!" Miller shouted. She slammed her palms onto the core. Light erupted outward. Not the freezing gold of before, but a blinding white threaded with every color of the spectrum. The Leviathan screamed, its body warping and twisting as if being pulled apart by unseen hands. The vortex above the city flared wide, dragging the alien and its drones upward in a storm of light and sound. One final roar echoed through the sky, and then they were gone. Silence returned. The sky cleared. The citizens of the city stood in shock, their centuries-long pause finally over. The young woman who had first pleaded for help stepped forward. "The heart is safe now. But you must understand, they will return. They always return." Vance glanced at Miller and Aya. "Then we'll be ready." Weeks later, in the open desert where the dome had once stood, Vance stood alone. The city was gone, returned to wherever or whenever it belonged. But in the empty air before her, the sunlight bent, just slightly. A faint shimmer, like a ripple on water. Above, high in the thin clouds, something silver glinted and vanished. Vance didn't smile, didn't frown. She simply whispered, "They're not finished with us."